Yesterday was another day ending in Y, so of course Prime Minister Mark Carney was making a complete fool of himself. You would think that the Liberal comms team would eventually realize that they are in fact running a literal robot for Prime Minister, and they should stop trying to put him in situations where he has to come across as real and relatable. Because these geniuses yesterday decide to put him in a press conference in a construction site in Edmonton flanked by working class, middle aged men, the least likely demographic to be voting liberal, and the whole thing looks awkward as heck. Everyone clearly does not want to be there, especially the construction workers who are probably told they have to be there or they're going to lose their jobs. Before I get into this clip and before I get into some other news like Pierre Poilievre going after Carney for having the Century Initiative guy on his campaign, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers by mid-December of this year, and leave a comment if you can. Here we go. Here is Mark Carney trying to look relatable on a construction site.
See you guys. All right.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this announcement. And those who are visiting us, welcome to Edmonton, Alberta's capital city, and the city of festivals. And so, good afternoon. And today is an exciting day. We're working incredibly hard in Edmonton to build housing our city needs.
That was art. Why would you ever bring these guys who clearly don't want to be there to stand next to Mark Carney, who looks like Mr. Burns and Gumby combined, hunched over there looking awkward? They're there with their hands in their pockets looking like this is eating into their break time. My goodness, the man does not know how to project strength at all. And know what else is kind of embarrassing for Mark Carney? The fact that his campaign has already devolved from him having his own ideas into him just stealing conservative policies. Look, he proudly announced this just an hour ago. And I'm going to get into who came up with this idea in the first place. So, Mark Carney says, "My government is canceling the capital gains tax hike. We're going to incentivize builders, innovators, and entrepreneurs to grow their businesses right here in Canada and create more good paying jobs. It's time to build the strongest economy in the G7. I thought we were already the strongest economy in the G7. You were the one saying it for like years. But anyways, who am I to judge? Who was the one who came up with the capital gains tax increase? Because, by the way, it wasn't actually Chrystia Freeland. She thought it was a stupid idea as the finance minister, and it wasn't Justin Trudeau's idea because do you think that guy has ideas? That was Mark Carney's idea. So Mark Carney is having to take his own policy suggestions out behind the barn to shoot them in the back of the head because this guy is absolutely stupid when it comes to economics. Just being a banker doesn't actually mean your own ideas from your own head are good. Yes, did he technically do a good job in 2008? Yeah, because he was following Harper and Flaherty's orders. He did a terrible job in the UK because he wanted to be the man to start telling people how it is, and it wasn't how it is, so everything absolutely fell apart, and the UK has a very weak economy in large part because of his terrible monetary policy that he was basically forcing the government to like pair up with high spending like plans or whatever. It was really weird where usually as the central banker, you're supposed to be taking orders, and instead, because he thought he had them over a barrel because Brexit was very contentious, that you better implement the policies I want or I'm walking off the job. And so they did that, and the economy got really bad really fast. And overall, if you look through liberal social media, there really isn't anything going on other than, the conservatives want to cut things. It's like, wow, that's a talking point I haven't heard in 5 seconds. In fact, you guys did that for 2 years straight. And by the way, cutting spending in Canada has never been more popular. That is how bad the Liberals did marketing their policies as well as attacking the Conservatives, that doing the exact opposite of what the Liberals want to do, and in fact, things that Conservatives don't even overtly say usually, cutting spending, has become a 65% popular option. 65% of Canadians believe that the spending is too high, which implies that they won't care if you end up cutting it. Here's another thing that was embarrassing that happened to Mark Carney today. So Donald Trump reiterated that he's very pleased that he's caused Pierre Poilievre to go down in the polls and that he'd like to work with the Liberals.
You know, a conservative until I got involved, because I don't care who wins up there. I frankly probably would do better with the Liberal than the conservative, if you want to know the truth. But just a little while ago, before I got involved and totally changed the election, which I don't care about, probably it's to our advantage, actually. You know,
That's hilarious. And the thing is, this is going to keep happening because it doesn't matter that Canadian politics tend to be a sideshow to the Americans. This is a funny story that everything constantly is blowing up because of Trump's opinions and what's going on. And when you look at that clip, pair it up with the Fox News interview with Laura Ingraham, you can tell he's just saying what he thinks. Donald Trump doesn't tend to be a man who uses a lot of guile or he just lies. He tends to just tell you exactly, like, unless he's like bragging. Trump has the tendency to be very braggadocious, and he'll kind of he'll kind of hyperbolize his achievements, but he's not talking about anything to do with himself, really. He's just talking about how Pierre Poilievre, ticked him off, and now he'd rather work with the Liberals because they're easier to work with. Subtext being, they're deeply pathetic individuals, and he can far more easily cut a deal that's good for the Americans with the Liberals than he can with the Conservatives. And I would say on top of that, though, there's no realm in which I think that Poilievre will be bad for the Americans. I think that Canada and the US should be cooperating more so that we can have a win-win out of this. But in Trump's frame of mind, he's simply just focusing on what will be very good for the US. And based on the way that the Liberals tend to frame everything as an all or nothing battle with the Americans, that if the Americans benefit, Canada fails. Carney, based on his own benchmarks, is a terrible leader to be going up against Trump. Do I even have to play the none of it clip again where the guy stumbled all over himself for like 45 seconds straight trying to figure out what to say about Donald Trump? The man is weak. And by the way, big win for Pierre Poilievre. A labor union president has now endorsed the Conservatives. That is pretty unheard of. And it's not because the Conservatives have proposed massive subsidies. They haven't proposed, tighter labor laws and making it artificially trying to increase wages or anything like that. No, it's because they believe in free market economics and they believe in not actually disrespecting working class men. That is the big stumbling block demographic for the Liberals. I've said this even in the polls where I think the Liberals are being way overpolled. If you look at men, even when the Conservatives are tied with the Liberals, they're still winning 40% plus of men because that is how much men hate the Liberal Party, especially younger to middle-aged men hate the Liberals entirely. Whereas women are a little bit more split and they're more willing to swing back to the Conservatives. Could they swing harder to the Liberals? Maybe. But that demographic group, women are more up for grabs than men are because men have been turned off for 9.5 years. The Liberals just basically pretending like they're scum. Another thing here, I think this is a great move by Pierre Poilievre. He's now going after the Carney Liberals and Carney himself for employing a man from the Century Initiative who is just a flat-out globalist. That word tends to be overused often. This man is literally a globalist. His policy framework, his way of seeing policy is all based on global vision. What should we do to globally reduce CO2 emissions? How can we increase the global economy rather than caring about the quality of the local economy? And Pierre Poilievre is rightfully going after Mark Carney on this man who wants to literally more than double. He wants to almost triple the Canadian population by 2100, which is patently insane.
Thank you. Next question.
Morning, Davis Legree from iPolitics. Earlier this week, Mark Carney added Mark Wiseman to his list of advisors on Canada-U.S. relations. Mark Wiseman was the co-founder of the Century Initiative, a lobby group that wants to bring Canada's population to 100 million people by 2100. Can I get your reaction to that? And what do you think, how do you feel about the idea of rapidly expanding Canada's population to reach 100 million by the end of the century?
Well, it shows that the Liberals would be no different in a fourth term than they were in the first three. The Liberals destroyed our immigration system in their first three terms in power. They followed a radical globalist ideology of massive, uncontrolled population growth that put strain on our housing market, our healthcare, and our job market. Now, corporate elites like Mr. Wiseman and Mr. Carney loved it because it drives wages down. It takes jobs away from our workers.
And can I just note here, and this is already a very good statement. I'll make myself a little bit smaller on screen for a second. Notice how I made myself bigger. Notice how the people standing behind Poilievre, like obviously nobody's going to be just standing there like pumping their fists the entire like press conference. Yeah, Poilievre, but they don't look like they hate being there. That is the big difference between Carney and Poilievre. Is the people who like Poilievre really like him. They respect him. The people who really like Carney are a very small subset of urban Torontonians, people who live in downtown Montreal, who are like big, I don't even know, like they're not even big anything. They're just people who I guess hate conservatives. And you really can't win as on a relativist kind of ideology. And that's the problem. Is right now the Liberals are running that they are not conservatives. And so they're stealing conservative policies, but because they're not the conservatives, people will like them. But even then, you would rather actually have people who like you rather than people who just don't like your opponent. And I don't even really know what's not to like here. I would advise, though, really wish Poilievre would lower his immigration targets because he says he'd like to have it in the range of 200,000 to 250,000 per year for new permanent residencies. I'd like to bring that down to 100,000 to 125,000. Make it a very strict point system. You don't get to bring in 50,000 dependents with you. You can bring in a few people with you who are your direct, immediate family, and that is it. And because the thing is that, yes, we should be tying it to how many houses were being built. Sure, that's a good policy for 5 years ago. Right now, we have so many people in the country, we actually need to do an overcorrection to allow for there to be some steam to be blown off.
In numbers that they we can't replace by growth in the job market. But it's terrible for our working class. And by bringing on Mr. Wiseman, it shows that Mark Carney supports the Liberal Century Initiative to nearly triple our population to 100 million people. We voted against the Century Initiative in the House of Commons, and the Liberals voted for the Century Initiative unanimously. That is the radical Liberal agenda on immigration. We will get back to moderate, reasonable levels of immigration. Our country was built by common sense immigration, but we need to ensure we grow the housing supply, our healthcare, and our jobs faster than we grow our population. And so I will reject the Century Initiative and get back to common sense immigration that brings people to Canada in numbers that we can hire, that we can house, and that we can care for. That was the best immigration system in the world.
I would still say it was a little bit too high under Harper, but I get his point here. And if he can hammer on this, especially in the debate, you're going to have Mark Carney fall apart. He's hiring someone from the Century Initiative. How do you think that is going to go over on a debate stage where Mark Carney now has to justify why this man with this radical policy set is advising his campaign, is somebody who he trusts so much, he brought him in, who was not usually a Liberal Party organizer or campaign manager or advisor. He is being brought in to advise Carney. This is a major sore spot for Carney because everybody hates the levels of immigration in Canada. In fact, do you know the demographic group that I find hates immigration the most? Second-generation Indian Canadians hate immigration so flipping much. It's actually hilarious how many times I come across, especially Hindu guys, and they want all the immigration to stop. They want like minus 50,000 as the immigration rate every year because they tend to resent that you get other people, especially from India, showing up and pretending like, oh, well, you're going to look out for me. It's like, no, I don't know you. And it's insulting that you show up here and then you're expecting that we're like part of a group because we look the same. Yeah. So I think that this is pretty much it for what's going on today. The thing with Mark Carney, too, is that he's running a campaign with the energy that that Justin Trudeau would usually just be going through a normal day. Everything's just sort of sad. Like he did this weird bit with the Edmonton Oilers, which was supposed to be very inspiring. Maybe I guess he's trying to prepare to run for office in Edmonton.
It's my moment in the show.
I had to mute this because I assume that this might be copyright music. But the problem with this is that if you watch the actual footage, people went there and they took videos of him missing slap shots. Do you think that is not going to be used constantly in advertisements that the man misses an open net? But yeah, oh my goodness, who let him do that Edmonton Oilers training? It's such a bad look for the Edmonton Oilers. If you're a sports team, never ally with a partisan politician. You shouldn't ally with Poilievre. You shouldn't ally with Jagmeet Singh, especially not Mark Carney. Why would you do this? You're in a very conservative province, and even if it's Edmonton that votes NDP on a provincial level, they vote mostly conservative on a federal level. Do you want people to stop buying tickets? My goodness, guys, get it together. So that should be it for me today, guys. Other than I do want to say I wish the Conservative Party would bring in independent MP Kevin Vuong as one of their candidates in Toronto. That will help them out immensely. The guy is a part-time radio show host in the city on top of a very popular independent MP. Please do that, guys. I just thought of that. Please do that, Conservative Party. He's extremely popular. Great on foreign interference. Great on extremism. Great going after all the Hamas lunatics on the streets of Toronto and all the Antifa people. He's great. And he's even conservative on fiscal issues. Did he run as a liberal in 21? Yeah. How do you think you're going to get into office in Toronto without running as a liberal? And by the way, the Liberals didn't even let him sit as a liberal because they found out he was anti-CCP, and they even told people not to vote for him on the ballot, and he still slipped by because people actually liked him on the ground, even as Justin Trudeau was telling people not to vote for him. Hilarious situation. So I do hope the Conservatives are smart enough to bring in Kevin Vuong, because next to Melissa Lantsman, he's the most popular and recognizable Toronto area politician. If he gets added, it immediately injects some energy into the Conservative campaign in the GTA. But anyways, so that is now truly it. I'm going to stop rambling. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, do all that fantastic stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.